Luxord has been on my mind a lot lately. There's no doubt he's going to play a key role in the future of the series, but what I've been more concerned with of late is not his future, but rather his past. Where exactly does he come from, and how is he related to the ancient Keyblade legacy? In my previous video on this topic, I did go into some of my thoughts on this, but for this video, I want to go over some of the things that I didn't address, starting with my thoughts on this scene.
If this box is truly as important as you say, why now? I believe you discovered that others also seek it, and you need to find it before anyone else does, in order to keep your connection to the box a secret from those around you. Xigbar, who are you really?
The question is, who are you, Luxord?
At the start of Remind, Luxord confronts Luxu about why he is searching for the black box, and I do think it's interesting the mirroring that's going on here with how Remind begins with a scene featuring Luxord and seemingly also ends with one featuring him. Within this first scene, Luxord displays a level of proactivity that we've never seen from him before in the series, likely because, as he says,
"That's what I've always done. I followed the orders from above, without question."
Following orders from the top is what he's always done, which now I'm starting to wonder, is that line also related to him possibly being the driver to a commander? When Luxord accuses Xigbar of seeking out the box to hide his own connection to it, this line also struck me differently, especially since I've been thinking a lot lately about the ancient Keyblade legacy. Now it's worth noting the fact that Luxord is said to be part of that legacy, and here we see him accusing Xigbar of having a connection to this ancient box that Xigbar says has been protected by ancient Keyblade wielders. And of course we know that Luxord is right on the money here because Xigbar, aka Luxu, is indeed connected to the box. In my video about the Keyblade legacy, I suggested that Luxord and Demyx could be from the Scala that we saw Brain in, the one that we now know will feature in the upcoming game Missing Link. And I still think that's very possible. It's just I'm uncertain whether they were from there originally or if they were from Unreality originally and crossed over. It could be one of them is from Kingdom Hearts Reality and the other isn't. It's hard to say, especially because if one or both of them are originally from Unreality, it's hard to see how that relates to the Keyblade legacy. But as I've alluded to in older videos, if Unreality has something related to Keyblades going on, then I can see how this may indeed be possible. But if he is from Unreality, it would explain why Luxu doesn't seem to know who Luxord really is, with his reaction to him in this scene clearly showing he's thrown off by his questioning and most likely didn't expect anyone to catch on to him like that. This is also something I forgot to mention in the Keyblade legacy video, but if Luxu doesn't even know who he is, then how the heck does Xemnas know he has an ancient Keyblade legacy? Luxu himself is actually one of the most ancient people walking around. He himself is a foreteller, one of the most ancient wielders that is under direct orders from the only person known to be from an even older time, and Luxu has been living from the time of fairy tales till now, all whilst keeping a watchful eye over all that has taken place. So if he is curious about Luxord, then that does lend credence to the idea that Luxord is originally from Unreality. And this isn't a solid theory I'm running with, but I'm going to throw out a bit of a wild card here. If Luxord is from Unreality, is it possible he knows the Master of Masters? And if he does, is it also possible that he heard about Luxu and the black box from him? If he did, could that mean when he saw Xigbar's actions, he put two and two together and realized this might be Luxu, and that's why he's so confidently accusing him of trying to hide his connection to the box? Even if he's from Kingdom Hearts Reality and is indeed from the Missing Link time, then it could still be possible that he may have heard about Luxu from someone else. The only problem with that is that it appears that Luxu is in Missing Link. If Luxu is in Missing Link and Luxord is from that same time, then why does it seem like Luxu doesn't know who he is? It would seem the only possible answer to that would have to be because he's from Unreality, right? Well, there is actually another possibility. Maybe, just maybe, the reason why Luxu doesn't seem to know Luxord is because he's in fact older than even Luxu is. How can that be, you might ask? Well, perhaps Luxord is originally from the era from before Key, the era from when the Master of Masters was in the war against the darkness. Now that's an entire era that we know nothing about, which leaves room for people to be tied back to it. And since Luxord and Demyx are said to be part of the ancient legacy, yet didn't appear in the Age of Fairy Tales, then this could be the reasoning for it. If so, this could mean that they were friends or allies with the Master of Masters. Remember, the Master said that he lost people close to him, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that someone that we've known all this time was in fact one of those very people. For Luxord's side of this, maybe whatever events led to him being lost to the Master is the same thing that led to him ending up in unreality. But you know, we often pair Luxord and Demyx together as if they'd be from the same time and place, but they don't really interact with each other very much in a way that implies they knew each other. I mean, when you look at how Marluxia and Larxene interact, for example, you can see more of a connection, and we know that their somebodies were associated. Even Larxene and Demyx have more going on in their interactions than Demyx has with Luxord, so I do think it's possible they're not from the same time, even though they're part of the same legacy. But if I had to bank on one of them being from the Master's time, it'd definitely be Luxord. And Demyx, well, I really have no idea where Demyx would fit in besides being in the missing link Scala, or simply a descendant of Keyblade wielders if he's not from the same time and place as Luxord. Let's go with this idea that Luxord is from the Master's time. With that vibe there was between Luxu and Luxord in Remind, and even with both their names having Lux in it, I'm starting to wonder if Luxu is in some way the Master's replacement for Luxord, and perhaps that's why they're clashing like this. Luxord of course probably wouldn't remember even if he did know of Luxu before he became a nobody, but who knows, perhaps like Luxu he still remembers things. And yes, I know Luxord is his nobody name, but I mean, many of us say the Master of Masters could be Light, or his name could be a derivative of Light in some fashion. And on top of that, we often claim he's aligned with the Light, aligned with the Lux. Even the actual light you gather in Key is called Lux, and that's the only time in the entire series light is ever referred to as Lux, and of course that era is the ancient Keyblade times. And of course, even that Lux is connected to the Master of Masters, since he's the one who created the unions and had them all set out to gather that Lux. And here we have two characters that both have Lux in their names, the only two in the whole series, both apparently part of the ancient times and legacy, and they're clearly being set up as adversaries to one another. If Luxord did indeed know the Master way back in the day, then that could be related to why he has an issue with Luxu. Him and Luxu have known each other for a while now, they've both been part of the original organization, and yet only after the black box became part of the equation did they suddenly have this tension, all of a sudden questioning each other's motives and character. Going along with this idea, I'm going to also add in that perhaps Luxord wasn't just any old Keyblade wielder, but originally a Keyblade master of some sort, because he does give me the vibes of someone who is constantly instructing or trying to pass on wisdom. Even when you read his character file, despite it not being very long, it reads like it's the wise words of some master to his students, and if he's being set up like an adversary to Luxu, who is an old Keyblade master, then it would follow that he'd have to be at his level, or perhaps even beyond it. Now whether that's all true or not, it still doesn't explain much as to why he's probably the one driving Yozora around, or why he gave Sora that wild card. Whilst I have potential answers for that, I don't have enough points to make something solid out of this that I'm satisfied with. But if I had to briefly hazard a guess, I'd say it's got something to do with fate and playing the long game.
I truly hope he's enjoying himself on his adventure. Maybe he'd like a hand to determine his fate.
If you are who you say, and it was fate that brought us here.
I've always been far more interested in the long game.
But one thing is for sure, the only way Luxord being Yozora's driver can work at all is if somehow, at some point, he managed to cross over from reality to unreality or vice versa. So if we're right and he is the driver, then it's very possible he'll be playing a key part in helping to return Sora back to Kingdom Hearts reality. Whilst I can't give you guys any truly solid stances when it comes to Luxord, and especially not Demyx, I will say I think there's a fair chance we might learn something more related to them in the Missing Link. As of the 4 said to have an ancient legacy, they are quite literally the last 2 links to the past that are missing an origin story. But I'm curious to know, what do you guys think about Luxord's origin and purpose? And I'm certainly interested to hear any Demyx theories, because he's the one character I don't think I'll ever make a proper video on without some more information. So hopefully Missing Link will fill in the gaps, but before that we have Dark Road to look forward to, and I have no doubt that when the new updates for that finally drops, we'll have a lot to talk about. But until then, my name is NextGenNovelist, And that's all I've got to say, and I'm out. Peace.